In today's episode, we are joined by Guy Selga, researcher and blogger for touringplans.com Disneyland.
I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse.
You are listening to the Main Street Magic Podcast with your hosts, Jeremy Stein and John Marone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Main Street Magic. I am your host, Jeremy Stein, and I am joined by my friend and co-host, John Marone.
Hello.
And today we are also joined by Guy Selga, who is the go-to guy for touring plans at Disneyland. Welcome to the show, Guy.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
So we want to just get right into it and find out a little bit more about you and how you got started with touring plans and the unofficial guide. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I started out with my own little Disney blog on the internet, just kind of covering, I called myself like a nostalgia blogger. So I would, scan old park maps and talk about it, old menus, dining menus from inside the parks, just little knickknacks and souvenirs and whatever. And then in 2012, I was kind of looking for a career change. I'd been working in quality assurance in the video game industry for, pretty much my entire adult life up to that point. And then they had an opening for a researcher on touring plans, and it was it was a service that I had used, and I had discovered it a few years before, and I used it and I loved it, and was a big fan of Len on his WDW Today podcast when that was still a thing.
Yeah.
So I applied for the job, and I used my Disney blog as a writing sample, and I got the job, and then now, over 5 years later, I'm still going, and started out with touring plans, and that eventually expanded into being a co-author of the Unofficial Guide to Disneyland book, which is on Amazon and in bookstores if you want to pick that up.
Yeah, definitely. So where did the Disney love and the Disneyland love come from? Have you always lived out in California? Was it something that you grew up on?
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Long Beach, California, which is about 20 minutes from Disneyland. It's less than 15 miles away. I've had an annual pass since 1994, and then before that, I've just had family friends who worked there and could get my mom and me and my grandma in. So I would just go with my mom and grandma like all the time when I was a kid, and then when I got my own annual pass in '94, I would go with friends, and even up until high school, everybody had annual passes or worked there. So It's just like Disneyland around here is one of those just like, not even a rite of passage thing. It's just like something everyone does. It's like going to the mall. So,
yeah.
I've always liked the films and cartoons and on TV and whatever else. But for me, the big focus has always been the parks themselves. And, started out with Disneyland, obviously, and then finally visited Disney World in 1996, and then finally visited Tokyo Disneyland in 2014. And so my love of the parks have just like expanded, and now I'm just a huge fan of all the parks. But Disneyland is still my focus.
Yeah.
So you're saying that your love didn't start there in Long Beach when Disney owned the Queen Mary?
So, it's funny, when I was a kid and Disney bought the Queen Mary, and they were throwing around opening Port Disney with Disney Sea, I remember getting the Port Disney newspaper that they put out to try to like hype up the residents, and then it never got built, and it like hurts me so bad as like a Long Beach native and Disney fan that we never got our beautiful theme park out there. But Disneyland is nice.
Yeah, Disneyland's nice. So I've been to Disneyland, I guess, 5 times, or 5 different trips. First one being in '96, and the last one being this past June, or Memorial Day weekend. And been going to Disney World since year 1. So I was, 6, 7 years old, and I do some of that where post old menus, post the my parents have the receipt from the Contemporary for $38 a night for when it first opened and we were there. So wow. I love seeing some of the old nostalgia of it. So looking at it now, you're working for Touring Plans. How often are you in the park? What's a typical day for you?
It just depends on what Touring Plans needs from me. So, sometimes I'll have some stats that the stats teams will need collected. So I'll go to the park and sit on a bench and count how many people walk through this walkway in an hour, or time the actual wait times of rides, because there's Disney's posted wait times and then there's the actual wait times you'll wait, because their wait times are reactionary, so it's like the wait time was 30 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So we want to know what the wait time is now. But then, also I write a lot. We have our Touring Plans blog, and then, even the book takes up, a good chunk of the year writing that. So it's not always in park stuff. It's a lot of writing. And then, we have a very comprehensive website on the parks that needs a lot of updating, because, you don't really think a lot changes at the parks, but just little stuff here and there changes constantly every day. And then also engaging with our users on social media and on our forums and on our little Lines chat on the app. That's a big part of it too, because we have over 100,000 subscribers and they like to be engaged with.
I mentioned a couple things to Len. So number one was, and you can expand on this, but wait times, Disney's versus Touring Plans. We did Radiator Springs Racers. It was showing 75 minutes. You guys were showing 38, and we ended up getting in there, I think, at 37. So a big difference between what it actually was versus what Disney was showing. So
yeah,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, there's a lot of reasons for that. It's just crowd patterns, or sometimes Disney will we call it stacking, where they'll just like put up a fake wait time because they're trying to get people to go somewhere else. Like they do it with Flight of Passage at Animal Kingdom, where they'll say like, oh yeah, 250 minutes, 10 minutes after the park opened. It's like not even possible. But yeah, we use a lot of different forms of data to come to our estimated wait time, such as historical averages, or even what somebody waited, because our users can submit wait times of their own that they just waited.
So the other thing that I mentioned to me is going to both parks is I find Disneyland to be more fluid. So when you say changes and you wouldn't realize how much things change, I find that, at least to me, that Disneyland's much more fluid. Changes happen more rapidly than Disney World, which seems to be just that machine. So what's your thoughts on that, and your thoughts just between the two parks? Your thoughts on Disneyland growing up there, seeing it today, versus Disney World, which you've now seen for 20 years.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's to me, when I go to Disneyland versus Disney World, I get like a different vibe, because when I go to Disneyland, it's obviously there's, especially these days, there's a lot of out of town visitors, but I still get on most nights like a really locals vibe. Like people are there to just kind of hang out and not rush around. People are like dressed like they're going out to the club sometimes when they go to Disneyland on Friday night. But then when you go to Disney World, it's like very much, you feel the rush, got to see everything. This is our once in a lifetime trip, or our once every 5 years trip, or whatever. And yeah, I like the Disneyland vibe more, just because that's what I grew up with. And I think like Disneyland caters to the locals more, just in terms of like, let's have some special food, for this time. But like, at Tomorrowland Terrace, or Galactic Grill, it's called now in Tomorrowland, they have a special menu that is only after 8 p.m. So it has like junk food, like a bunch of junk food, chili cheese fries or whatever. So just stuff like that. And then they'll do like special annual pass holder appreciation events all the time. A couple years ago, they did this one called Wednesdays with Walt, where every Wednesday they had like a speaker come out and kind of talk about what it was like working at Disneyland 40 years ago. And then they would show one of the old Disneyland TV shows that was like hosted by Walt back in the 60s and stuff. So just stuff like that I love. And I mean, I'm not like trying to crap on Disney World or anything. I love Disney World, obviously, but yeah, I like the easygoing like locals vibe of Disneyland more.
Yeah, I like it just because it's all walking, Right. So the last time I was there, we stayed at the Grand Californian. So you get to walk out of the resort right into, California Adventure. If I want to go to Disneyland, I walk straight across the concourse and I'm into that park. If I want to do Downtown Disney, I'm right there. So it is a much more compact. I also seem to think, at least for me, because there's not as many people because of the size of it. Not as many strollers, not as many, right? It's not that cattle call, so it does have that more relaxed atmosphere to it, at least to me.
Yeah, it's definitely more compact. Like attractions are stacked on top of each other sometimes, especially like when you go to Tomorrowland. And it's there's only 2 parks in Disneyland and there's 4 in Disney World, but they've somehow crammed the same amount of rides in 2 parks than they have in 4 at Disney World, which I always thought was impressive. There are definitely some parts of the park where it's like, okay, I need a little bit more room to breathe. Like when you're walking through the entrance of Tomorrowland or like that main thoroughfare of Adventureland, it can get a little congested, but I do like the charm that it's a really charming park, and there's like a lot of details packed into small places there.
So let's talk about some of the differences then. So, number one, Disneyland tends to do overlays for the rides for different times of the season, not just Christmas, but I was able to see Hyperspace Mountain, the things that Disney World doesn't try. So is that something of more catering to the locals that we're going to give? You're here, our locals are coming X number of times a year. We're going to give them something different.
Yeah, I think it is, because you look at something like Space Mountain, they have 2 different overlays. They have the hyperspace one, and they have the Ghost Galaxy for Halloween. And then It's a Small World, and these aren't like basic overlays. Like if you go on It's a Small World holiday, it's like a completely different ride, like top to bottom. There's decorations everywhere, new music, and that's also because it's been going for I think 20 years now, so they've had 20 years to like add little stuff every year, and now it's just like this insane undertaking where it's a completely different ride. And then Haunted Mansion Holiday, obviously, which is arguably one of the most popular rides all year, and it just makes me wonder why they don't just give Nightmare Before Christmas its own ride now. Yeah. At this point.
Oh yeah. I caught the Decorating Disney special last night, and I had seen a little bit about some of the holiday overlays, but I was blown away by Haunted Mansion and Small World, what they do out in Disneyland. That was so fascinating and interesting to see how it is a complete overhaul. And I know, being somebody who visits Disney World on a monthly basis, John and I both usually spend 3 to 4 days out of every month down at Disney World. I wish that they would give that to the pass holders in Disney World as well. That's something I think I'm definitely jealous of for the Disneyland locals and the folks that are going there all the time.
Yeah, I'm surprised they don't do like at least It's a Small World.
Yeah.
Just throw some decorations there. I know they do the Jingle Cruise out there.
Yeah, we still have Jingle Cruise.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's I don't think it's a fair trade, but at least we're still holding on to that one, I guess.
And we had the Country Bear Christmas for a number of years, which we don't even have that anymore. And to me, that was a better show than the regular show.
Yeah, I love Country Bear Christmas, and I went to Tokyo Disneyland last month and actually saw it again for the first time since, I guess 2000 is when it was removed from Disneyland. And it killed me because I love that show so much. I really wish they would bring that back to Disney World.
So I'm going to say some rides. You could give me a brief overview of why you think one is better than the other for just Disneyland versus Disney World. So we'll start Jungle Cruise.
Oh, they're both so good. Okay, I'll be quick, but I'll say why I like each one. I like Disneyland's because I like that it ties into the rest of Adventureland and kind of the time period of Indiana Jones Adventure, which is like right next door, and you can see from the ride. They have it in like the same era, and I really like that. But then I also like Disney World because you go through that cool temple, and I like the little queue, and I just like the area of Adventureland it's in Disney World.
Yeah, so that was another thing. So you mentioned queue. So before I go to the next ride, this is one thing that it was odd this past trip. So this past trip, when we went Memorial Day weekend, it was somewhat crowded because it was the start of Guardians of the Galaxy. It was also the end of Hyperspace Mountain, and I think we were getting close to being, within the last month of the electrical parade. And I even think at that time the locals were blacked out during Memorial Day weekend.
Probably.
So crowds weren't too bad, but it's an interesting thing because at Disney World, all the queues are enormous and they're inside. They got to keep the people out of the heat. They got to keep them out of the rain. Where Disneyland, you'd go to a ride, you'd look at it and you'd say the wait time's 10 minutes, but there's people outside the ride.
Yeah.
And it just messes with you because you're like, if I ever saw somebody waiting outside the line at Disney World, it's like, that's not 10 minutes. We're going to be here all day. Where at Disneyland, the minute you get into the building, you're getting on the ride. So just different. So when you do mention the queue of, Jungle Cruise or some of these different ones, they're not as elaborate in Disneyland or California Adventure as they are in Disney World.
Yeah, some do have a nice queue, but yeah, most of them, especially like the Fantasyland attractions, they don't have much of a queue at all.
Okay, so this one's not a ride, but castle.
I like both for the parks that they're in. It's fine either way. It's hard for me to pick. It's like the Haunted Mansion facade. I think they both match the lands that they're in.
So it's interesting to me because if you're a Disney World veteran and the first time you go to Disneyland, you're going to look at the castle and be like, where's the rest of it?
Yeah.
Because, it's probably half the size. It's just not that enormous part. But what is neat is it does have a walkthrough in it, which is a nice little place to go. So I'm going to give that, for me, I'm giving that one to Disney World. So Small World.
I've got to pick Disneyland's for sure. I like the flooded sets of the Disney World version. I think that's really cool. But then just the scope scale of the ride at Disneyland and the facade is just incredible at Disneyland.
I couldn't agree. So Disneyland, you start outside. The facade is enormous, and then it actually has Disney characters throughout the ride, which you don't have at Disney World. But the characters are so well done, you kind of forget that they're there.
Yeah, they look great.
Yeah, look really good. Let's see here. Thunder Mountain.
Oh, they're both good. I have to give the edge to Disney Worlds, but I like Disneyland's, but the size and just the fun factor and the surroundings, like how it's like on the river bank at Disney Worlds, and the boat goes by and they have those geysers and everything. I love that. So
here's where I'll go different with you on this one for a quick thing. So number one is just as you're going through the queue at Disneyland, you're kind of underneath the train.
Yeah.
Instead of next to it. So the inside at Disney World's good, but if Disney World would put the visual effects of the rocks, it would win hands down. And I'm surprised that Disney World doesn't have that.
Yeah, Disneyland's finale with the explosions and stuff, that is like the coolest thing.
Yeah, that was absolutely, and the smoke and everything it has is just absolutely awesome there. Haunted Mansion.
Oh, Disney World's easily. Yeah. I don't like Disney World's queue with all the cartoony graveyard stuff, but I do like Disneyland that you're actually like entering the front door of the house. I think that's like really effective and nice effect. But yeah, overall Disney World's.
Yeah, and I'll give it in the overlay as well. Pirates.
Oh, Disneyland's. Yeah, everything about Disneyland.
Pirates is my favorite ride. So again, I said I've been Pirates from 74 to 96. There's nothing better than Pirates. And then I wrote Pirates at Disneyland the first time, and I'm like, wait, why don't I have a second drop? Why?
Yeah.
And to me, it's kind of if you've never been to Disneyland, Pirates it starts off like almost Splash Mountain. Just kind of wading through the water and everything, which to me, I don't know. I understand that there's a backstory there. I don't get the backstory, why I'm going through like a bayou and then suddenly I'm inside of pirates and ship shooting. But I had read somewhere that they said it's a dream, right? You're going into a dream.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's people have also said it's like the reverse order. So you're seeing the results of all the piracy. It's because they're all dead, but their treasure is still there. And
let's see. Speedway. Autopia versus Speedway.
I have to go with Autopia just because of the landscaping. It's like actually nice. Yeah.
And
I don't hate the
off
Speedway.
you go off road.
Yeah, you go off road. You see the little Osmo robot. Yeah.
Let's see, Buzz Lightyear.
I mean, none of them are very good, but I'll pick Disneyland just because. Yeah, it's Disneyland is slightly better, and it never really has a wait. So.
And the guns detach, so you actually get to hold the guns
nice.
versus them being attached to the vehicle.
Yeah.
With Disneyland, they come off, so you could actually shoot. Space Mountain.
See, this is another one where I think both of them have strengths and weaknesses. But overall, I think I like Disneyland's more, just because I don't know, it's more fun. And Disney World is a little rough to me.
Yeah. So actually, in the unofficial guide, it just say that it's a smoother track at Disneyland for that. But I like the fact that Disneyland does a much better job with music, right? The actual music in the ride vehicle.
Yeah, and it syncs up with
which it syncs up
ride,
versus Disney World really not having the music, and then the sitting side by side. I just like that if you're a parent, you have small children, and you're sticking a seat in front of you or two seats in front of you, and that there's just no connection there. So I do like the side by side seating there. For them. So let's talk about some of the things. Why do you think? So Disneyland still has, it doesn't have 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It's now Nemo. They have Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. They still have, they have Alice in Wonderland, which Disney World's never had. Some of those different rides. Any thoughts on why Disney World has been quick, especially having so much land, to yank something and change it, where it seems like Disneyland manages to just continue and keep those rides? They're not even though it's crowded in certain areas, they're not closing rides down.
Yeah, I've always wondered that too, because even with Alice in Wonderland, you mentioned, they did a huge upgrade to that, I guess in 2015, that made it like modern, but it still has a very classic feel. But it was just such a huge improvement. But then with Disney World, like Peter Pan is still the same. But then Disneyland went back and did a ton of upgrades to Peter Pan even, and now that's like better than ever. So I don't know why they feel the need to close a lot of classics and then not upgrade the ones that they do have, because I think there's a balancing act you have to reach. Like, you do need new rides and stuff, but you also can't be like Universal Studios, to where like Universal Florida, they have one original ride. Like, you got to keep some classics around to like make your old fans happy. I don't know, that's just a little pet peeve of mine, but yeah, I think Disneyland also is really, they have some nostalgic, like, higher ups that still want to keep like the old stuff around, and Imagineering is right there too. It's right up the 5 freeway in Glendale. So I think also you have that, where you have Imagineers that have been there for decades that are right near the park and want to keep the old stuff around. And the old stuff still probably tests well with guests and still has long lines, so they probably see no reason to get rid of it. So
for you, I mean, looking at it from touring plans and everything, what are maybe some of the more popular rides that maybe we wouldn't think of, or that we know the headliners, but what are some of the more popular rides that are not a headliner that maybe we just don't think about?
You see a lot of consistent wait times, and like we do a survey where we our readers can rate the rides that they experience during their vacations. So we see consistent wait times and high rankings towards smaller stuff like the Storybook Land canal boats in Fantasyland, and like Casey Jr.'s train in Fantasyland, and then stuff like that you wouldn't expect just because they're like adults don't care about it, like a lot of the Toontown stuff. So Roger Rabbit's ride, the Mickey meet and greet, they always have high wait times, they get high ratings, but nobody cares or talks about them because they're for kids, but people love it.
Yeah, I was actually surprised this last time we went through, because I remember my oldest ones taking them when they were young, and in Toontown, right, you have Donald's Boat, you had at that point it was Goofy's Bounce House.
Yeah.
And then I went there this time and told my little kids, hey, go run in there, you know, you can bounce around. And they're like looking at me like, hey, there is no more.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, hey, the bounce house doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I mean the house is still there, but
Right.
I think it's just a place to relax now. But then Mickey's house, like, it's crazy. It's like one of the most elaborately themed queues ever. You're walking through Mickey's house, and then you walk through his backyard, and then you can meet Mickey. And it always has a huge line, and that's just one of those places that people overlook, though. But it still has a high wait, so like not a lot of people are overlooking it.
Yeah, Mickey's house, Minnie's house, those were great. And again, something that we had at Disney World.
Yeah, I miss those.
And then,
Yeah.
they get taken away there. So staying at Disneyland, let's talk about food for that, because that's another thing that I'm so impressed with Disneyland is, when I think of Magic Kingdom at Disney World, there's not a lot of food that jumps out to you, right? Other than now, I guess it's be our guest, because Crystal Palace to me is one of the worst buffets I've ever seen or had. Just not good at all. The Plaza restaurant's nice, but it's small. Tony's is hit or miss. Olive Garden, a lot of people say. Not a lot to it. So, Disneyland just seems to be incredible for food, for different types of sit-down dining. So how does the food rank there at the park, and maybe even what are some of your favorites?
So with Disneyland food, they realized in the early 2000s that they need to cater to their annual pass holders who can just eat anywhere outside of the park, especially all the restaurants that are literally right outside the front door on Harbor Boulevard. So they actually made a huge park-wide effort to improve the food, and it's just gotten better ever since. And some of my favorites are French Market in New Orleans Square. It's a quick service restaurant, and they just have like really high quality, Cajun food like jambalaya and some really good salads even. Like, it's just crazy that I can go to a theme park and get like food that is genuinely good, not just good for a theme park. I also really like on Main Street there's Carnation Cafe, and they have this mushroom meatloaf there that is like, the smell is absolutely intoxicating. I love it. And then there's just like good desserts everywhere too. Like they have this one Matterhorn macaroon, and it looks like the Matterhorn, but it's a macaroon, and it's like covered with white chocolate and powdered sugar, and it's delicious.
Yeah. So I like it, and when I was there, the line down Main Street just to get the corn dog from the cart.
Oh yeah, people love the corn dogs.
And then the other thing I see, and I didn't pay as much attention to it just because I do get it from us, but the Dole Whips out in California.
Dole Whips are a big deal here.
Yeah, like 45-minute waits and stuff.
Oh yeah, the line is long.
Yeah.
Well, what I've seemed to notice. Go ahead.
Disney shows a rare constraint with the Dole Whips that they don't show with really anything else. Like, they could put Dole Whips at another location and help with the line, but I think they want to kind of try to make it seem like a hyped thing. So they only keep it at that place at the Tiki Room, and the line is long, and you just got to deal with it if you want a Dole Whip.
Well, and something that I've noticed just from things that I see on social media and following some other Disney sites that relate to food is it seems that Disneyland gets a lot more specialty treats and specialty foods that I don't feel like we get a lot at Disney World. It seems like there's always something going on, whether it was around the Guardians of the Galaxy ride and Mission Breakout, that there were things that were so specific to that. It's not like we saw specialty treats revolved around Pandora outside of kind of just Pandora that were going to only be there for a limited time in Disney World. It seems like Disneyland has the hold on really special food that you may only get for a certain amount of time that I'm sure, again, is built all around the locals who are constantly coming in and want something fresh and new.
Yeah, they're always doing like the special food where it's like you can only get it during one weekend. Like for Pirates of the Caribbean's 50th anniversary or 60th anniversary, whatever it was. They did golden churros, which were like caused a stir on social media, and like there was long lines, and then it was gone.
Yeah.
One thing I just wanted to point out too, Disney has recently jumped on the like fancy donut trend that is
Okay.
like hitting California really
Yeah.
hard. So donuts used to be this like donut store thing, and you go in and they're $1 or whatever. But then like this place called Voodoo Donuts was one of the first places that I
Yeah.
remember doing it, where it's like, hey, donuts are $7 now, and we're gonna put a whole candy bar on it and a apple and a whole pie and whatever. And so Disney was finally like, yeah, we're gonna get in on that too. And then they were crazy popular, and they would sell out within like the first hour of park opening.
Jeez.
Yeah, group bread, right? So I missed it when I was there, but group bread. But that's the other thing. We'll get to DCA in a minute, but
Yeah.
Disney World, we got Baby Groot, and DCA has full-size Groot.
Yeah, that's a difference.
Big difference.
Yeah.
So tell us about the resorts. How popular are the resorts and everything? I mean, you have 3 resorts there for Disneyland. How popular are they?
So Disney doesn't release their official numbers, but we've heard that their yearly occupancy rates are as high as 95%, which is crazy. Like that is like crazy good. Even though they're so expensive, I don't have the rack rates in front of me, but I want to say Grand Californian is up to maybe four or $450 a night, like throughout the year. And then Disneyland Hotel and Paradise Pier aren't much cheaper. There's only 3 hotels now. They are building a fourth one, but they are very popular. But then the good thing about Disneyland is you have very affordable hotels right outside the front door on Harbor Boulevard, on Catella, within walking distance. Some of them you can walk to the front gate within less than 5 minutes. They are very cheap, no frill hotels. But during some times a year, you can get them for as low as $90 a night, which isn't bad for staying within a 10-minute walk from Disneyland.
Yeah, a couple of those. So this last time was the first time we stayed at a Disneyland resort. We stayed at the Grand Californian, but we did a Costco package, which was hotel, tickets, and everything. And in the past, I usually stayed at the Hilton or somewhere right there, where you could either take the shuttle right to the entrance, or you could even walk there. And that's the thing that's amazing to me, is how Disney, if at 95% occupancy, and yet they've kept their rates 3 to 4 times higher than any place else nearby, how they're still getting 95% occupancy. Because you really don't really get a lot extra for that.
Yeah, you get like the magic mornings on certain days where it's like an hour early entry. But yeah, there's not a huge list of perks. I mean, if you want to stay in the Disney bubble, which is obviously very powerful for some people, and I definitely feel that when I go to Disney World, I want to be in the bubble. But yeah.
Yeah, I used to get the Southern California City Pass every time we'd go. So then that would give you early entry for at least one morning as well. So that was 3 days at Disneyland, a day at SeaWorld, and a day usually somewhere else. I forget what the other choice was. Might have been the zoo, San Diego Zoo.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, or you can add it on. But this time I didn't do that because I did the package. But it just seems that some of the ticket packages out there, there's a lot more. I won't say there's a lot more options, but because Disney World has tons of ticket options.
Yeah.
But it does seem like there are a lot of options there for Disneyland as well.
Yeah, there's a good amount, and stuff like that City Pass and the Costco deals are always good.
So let's talk about one other thing, because if you're familiar with Disney World, we've gone through so many versions of FastPass, right? The regular FastPass, where you go stick your ticket in the machine and then you come back at a predetermined time, to now that we have it as part of the app, and you can book up to 3 rides in advance, and depending where you stay, up to 60 days ahead. When I was just there this summer, you still had the ticket machines where you go and put your media into the machine and you get the comeback time. But I did see now that they're doing a FastPass type thing where you can do it electronically once you're in the park, but it's $10 per person to be able to get
per day
to get one pass at a time. Or I mean, how is that being received, and what are your thoughts on how that program works?
Yeah, that was a bit surprising the way they went about that. It's $10 per person per day, and that gets you the ability to book fast passes on your phone instead of having to walk to the machines. You can only do one at a time, like you said. You also get free unlimited PhotoPass downloads, which includes the on-ride photos, and there's PhotoPass photographers everywhere in the park. So that's a nice perk, and it seems to be that's what they're selling it to families as, like, hey, you get these PhotoPass downloads. I was actually really curious with how that was going to go, but now I'm hearing that it's actually pretty popular and a price increase is coming very soon. But as far as like me personally, I don't, I use it because it's included on my annual pass, but I don't really see that much benefit to it. I don't mind walking to the fast pass machines. It's not like it's a huge park. Like, if I was at like, if it was like the size of Animal Kingdom where I had to cross half the state to get to one ride to the other, then I would think that was a good deal. But yeah, I don't mind it. It is funny though that they just didn't make it free. It makes me wonder what about FastPass Plus at Disney World didn't work for them that they decided to charge for it at Disneyland.
Yeah.
There's got to be an interesting behind the scenes story with that one.
Yeah, I mean, especially $10 per day per person. I mean, it just, a family of four, an extra $40 on top of what you're spending and I don't know how much you guys have looked into in that, but I mean, on a busy day at the park, I mean, how many fast passes can you get? I mean, do you get 3 a day? Do you get 4? Because again, when I say I want to ride it, it's still giving me a time. So if I'm going to the popular rides, are those times just hours ahead?
Yeah. I on a busy day, I think if you were on it, you could get at least 3. Probably 4 or 5. If you wanted to ride Radiator Springs Racers or Guardians of the Galaxy, like those run out really fast, But pretty much everything else, they have enough fast passes that I think you would be fine to get. But Radiator Springs Racers and Guardians are the 2 big new rides, and you want to ride those, but the fast passes don't last long for them, which sucks.
Yeah, so both great. So let's hop over to that park. So you were already starting to go to Disneyland when they decided to take the parking lot and build a California-themed park for California. What's your thoughts? I mean, history, changes of the park, rides, I mean, anything there for DCA?
So when it first was announced, everyone was hopeful. But then, as it got closer and closer, it was like obvious that there were going to be some problems with it. And I remember even at first, they said DCA is not included with your annual passes. It's going to be too popular, so you're just going to have to buy like discounted tickets. So, remember when it opened, we bought a discounted ticket and went in. It was just the most like pathetic theme park I've ever seen. I don't even want to disparage like Magic or Six Flags. It's like it was lower than Six Flags level. Then it got a little better. They added Tower of Terror a couple years later. They brought back the Electrical Parade. Okay, added little things here and there. But then in 2012, that's when it really had its top to bottom redo with Buena Vista Street, Cars Land, and then it was like, okay, DCA is finally a nice place to visit. Like that is my like bare minimum for a Disney park. Is it a nice place to visit and like hang out in? And it finally became that. And now it's a great park, especially going back to the seasonal overlay thing. They just blew it out for Christmas this year. Buena Vista Street is covered in Christmas. Cars Land, the Maters and Luigi's have seasonal overlays. They do the Festival of Holidays thing where it's like a miniature food and wine festival. Viva Navidad, which is like a street party parade thing with the 3 Caballeros, is like one of the best Disney Christmas things I've ever seen. It's finally a good park.
Yeah, finally a good park. I forget what the parade was, but the Pixar parade during the day. This one was unique to me because I thought the parade was awesome. I mean, it was just, every Pixar movie seems to be represented. Great floats. It was a little cool that day that we were watching it, and to me, it's just interesting that the characters squirt you
Yeah.
with water. No, it's like we're sitting there and cold, and suddenly Buzz Lightyear is shooting a stream of water at you from out of the blue. Kind of a unique time, but that's
they're moving that parade to Disneyland, I think in April, and they're adding floats to it from Inside Out and I think Inside Out and Up maybe. Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. So I understand that DCA is undergoing a number of changes, right? So the whole Paradise Pier is being
Paradise Pier is being changed to Pixar Pier.
There's a lot of disappointment out there in that, isn't there?
Yeah, I think I think that one's up in the air, like if it'll be good or not.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things, like, does Pixar Pier really need to be changed? Like, there's still the whole Hollywood backlot area where Monsters Inc. is, that is still very much like DCA 1.0. It needs a lot of help, and that's where the rumored Marvel stuff is going to go. But they're taking California Screaming and renaming it to the Incredicoaster, and they're adding like a storyline around the Incredibles to it. So we'll see. It could be good, I guess. People love Pixar, so
I'm not sure that coaster needs an overlay to it. I mean,
or a story,
or a story.
Does a coaster like that need a story? I don't think it does. But
so, and I do agree with you. So, Monsters Inc. the ride is, to me, kind of in the middle of nowhere and stands out like a sore thumb. Right? There's some bathrooms, some restaurants, and suddenly you get this ride. And especially now that they put Guardians there, but then on the other side of Guardians, you got the Bugs Life Land, which how popular is that area? Because I would think for people who are bringing children who are kind of that 5, 6 and under, that's probably a pretty popular area.
Yeah, I mean, it's always packed with people. Not really any high wait times, but that's really the only thing to do for like little teeny tiny kids. So, there's a bunch of little kids running around. It'll be interesting to see if they stick with it though, because that's another rumored area for the Marvel stuff, or if they're going to retheme it to Marvel or something. I don't know.
Which is interesting because, again, the good news is Disneyland gets to have all the Marvel characters and create the rides after it versus Disney
they just
World,
can't say Marvel in the park. They just can't have the Marvel name on anything, but they can use all the characters.
Oh, really? Interesting. I didn't know that. So I brought it up with Len. I'm not a fan of Tower of Terror. I could care less if I ride it or not. I've done it. I did it at the beginning when it was just one drop, and then there were 2 drops, and then it's random, and who knows how many times you're dropping. And then going out there, I said, I got to try the Guardians of the Galaxy one. And even though it has tons of drops and all that, I loved it. Thought it was one of the best Disney rides I've ever been on. So Len said that is just, reviews and ratings are through the roof on that. So any comments or talks of what, on that ride?
I'm not a fan of it just because I'm not a big fan of Marvel, but the ride itself is fun, like moving up and down and stuff. And I like how in the queue they sprinkle in like little references to old Disney rides. So one of my favorite Disney attractions ever is Country Bear Jamboree Vacation Hoedown. And in the queue for Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, they have the octopus that was Shaker's girlfriend in the vacation version. I just love that so much. And then they have the old Yeti from the Matterhorn over at Disneyland, because they like upgraded it a couple years ago to like this crazy scary one. So I like stuff like that. And the ride itself is super popular. People love it, and it'll be interesting to see what they build around it with Marvel, because there's like a lot of rumors about the kinds of rides they do. Like one of the rumors is they're going to use the Tron roller coaster ride system for like a Avengers coaster, which could be really cool. And I just want to see what that area looks like.
So let's talk about DCA with food. So I think, to me, up until they opened up the new cafe restaurant and that, it's interesting to me. I think food got overlooked at DCA versus Disneyland. It doesn't seem to have the.
DCA has like basically the annual pass holder lounge, which is the Cove Bar. They have like the lobster nachos there and all the Instagram worthy alcohol drinks. So you walk by Cove Bar and there's like an hour long wait every day, all day. But yeah, other than that, I don't know. They have some good stuff. What's interesting about DCA is they only have one place that serves hamburgers, and you think like a Disney park, the basic hamburgers would be like the bread and butter for like tourists who don't have an adventurous palate, which seems like most tourists don't. But yeah, they only have one place that serve hamburgers. But DCA is also very big on seasonal stuff. So they're always like changing out menus of places for Christmas or Lunar New Year or Three Kings Day, just any holiday they can find, they'll change out menus for it and try stuff, which I like. And then I don't really partake in it much because it's just too expensive, but they have at this point I think three different food and wine style festivals throughout the year where they have all the booths out with all the food. It's just too expensive for me, but they seem popular and they're sticking with it, so obviously somebody's enjoying it.
Yeah, and we have that same thing now with Epcot. I'm pretty sure we're going to get to a point where 365 days out of the year there's going to be some sort of festival going on because it's becoming so ingrained, I think, inside of Epcot, and that's what's driving so many people there. So if and this is I guess one of my questions I'm interested in, if you could go, and we'll do it both ways, if you could go and bring any single attraction from Disney World to Disneyland, what would it be? And if there was any single attraction at Disneyland that you think would be the best for Disney World, what would it be? And it doesn't necessarily have to fit within a land,
right?
But what would you look at for both of those parks if you could send one back and forth, basically?
Okay, I love Flight of Passage.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite rides, so I would personally bring that over. But my since I'm a huge nerd and I have no shame, I would bring the People Mover, which it was removed from my beloved park in 1995. I would bring the People Mover from Disney World over. The other one was, what would I give to Disney World?
Yeah, well, what do you think that Disney World is missing that Disneyland has, something that we don't have down here?
Indiana Jones Adventure.
Yeah.
But we have it, right?
Yeah, with dinosaur?
Yeah, I mean, why don't they just get rid of the dinosaur and just turn it into Indiana Jones? I mean, it's the same ride vehicles. For the most part, it's almost the same ride, the same track. It's like, just change the overlay to something that people would be interested in.
Yeah. Well, and that was some of the, I mean, again, when you talk about rumors, that's been rumors with Dino Land in general, was switching everything over to an Indiana Jones land. Because Dino Land could burn to the ground tomorrow, and I'm not sure how many people would be that upset that it was gone. Yeah. They'd probably be glad that there was something new going in there. So speaking, though, of Flight of Passage and bringing that ride over, if there was an opportunity to bring the entire land of Pandora over to Disneyland, is that something you think people would find interest in, or is it really just that Flight of Passage ride is all anybody's ever going to care about?
You know, with DCA, now that they've kind of like ditched the California theme, and they're just putting in whatever Pixar and Marvel and all that, just throw Avatar Land in DCA. Why not?
Well, and it sounds like, again, and not having been out there and seeing what it was and knowing what it really could be, it sounds like DCA is so similar to what we're doing at Hollywood Studios, where, it's going to become these small little lands of putting you inside a movie, as opposed to, it's not that doesn't have a California theme anymore. We're not going to have a Hollywood per se theme anymore. It's going to be more of Disney specific lands in the way those work. So what are you looking forward to out there with Star Wars Land and what's coming? What's that going to look like for the parks? Seeing the popularity and what's happened to the Guardians of the Galaxy ride how is that influx? Because we're seeing preparations now. Obviously, we have Toy Story Land coming, but we're seeing preparations now. 2 years of the widening of roads, of they're increasing the parking at Hollywood Studios by like 50%. What's already in place out there, and is it going to be able to handle the influx? And what are the locals going to think of having this new land, and how accessible will it be to them?
Yeah, the Disneyland has been preparing. They closed the Rivers of America and they shortened a significant chunk of it. And now that that's all reopened, you can kind of see the size of Star Wars Land and just you realize like, whoa, this thing is going to be huge. You can also see the two rides. You can see the ride buildings of the two new Star Wars Land rides right when you drive into the parking structure at Disneyland. So everyone sees it every day, and they're just massive. They're like as big as the parking structure. It's crazy. So just to have something that size in Disneyland is going to be a big change because it's like a smaller scale, charming park. And they, I don't know if you've seen the pictures of Grand Avenue over at the studios. Yeah. So that's like the entrance or the transition in Star Wars Land. So in Disneyland, the entrance is near Frontierland. So like the transition there is a bunch of rock work. Like you're almost going into caves and stuff to get to Star Wars Land. And we can already see that. Just the caves are blocked off, obviously. And then as far as expanding parking, they blew it. They were arguing with the city, and their big parking expansion plans have failed and gotten delayed. And so come Star Wars Land opening, like they're just not going to have enough parking, I guess. Yeah. Which is going to suck, but I guess we'll handle that in 2020 or 2019 or whatever when that opens.
Yeah. Don't you think they got to do something then that it's almost going to block out the locals, at least for a period of time, or really make the passes, expensive. I was reading and I saw, did they do away with the Southern California pass this year?
Yeah, Disney always does that where they, around the holiday season, they'll get rid of some of the lower tier passes. The cynic in me is just like, they just do it to make people buy the more expensive passes. Because a lot of people give annual passes as Christmas gifts. Yeah. Okay. I would imagine that huge chunks of annual passes will be blocked out for when Star Wars Land opens. There's also a lot of rumors going around that, I believe Star Wars Land in Disneyland is going to be done about 6 months before the studios version, but they'll open officially at the same time. But during those 6 months, it'll be like hard ticket upsell events to get into Disneyland. Yeah. So, but will that help the crowds? Like, I don't think so. It'll just get the whales to open their wallets and get into the land early.
Right. I mean, we're still seeing massive crowds at Pandora, which has been open now for 7-8 months pretty much. I can't even imagine what Star Wars Land and all is going to look like in both locations.
Yeah, and at least at Disneyland they have 60 or 70 other rides or whatever to take the heat away, but man, in the studios,
and we're only getting 2 with Toy Story Land. There's nothing else coming, and then you're going to get 2 more with Star Wars. So it'll be very, very interesting to see the way that plays out. And will there be enough? As much as I love Pandora, I think it's absolutely breathtaking. You have your 2 rides. You're only ever going to do one of them. I mean, it's very rare you're going to have an opportunity to do both because it's going to take up most of your day. And it's neat to walk around in, but you're not spending half a day just inside that area at Animal Kingdom. There's just not enough to do, and I have a feeling as breathtaking as Galaxy's Edge and Toy Story Land will be at Hollywood Studios, I still don't know. I don't know how much time people will spend in them outside of what they're doing just to wait in a queue and go on a ride. That'll be really interesting to see.
Yeah, I don't know. Star Wars Land looks like it will have a lot of little nooks and crannies to explore and stuff, but I don't know if the average family does that. Yeah, I don't. To me, just from doing what I've been doing for over 5 years now, it seems like people are like go. They just like their metric of success in visiting theme parks is like how many rides did I ride in a day.
It's not even how much you enjoy it or how much you relax or how much you felt like you had a vacation. It's that checklist and knocking off as much as possible. And then the other half of the time they're probably posting about it on social media, or they're looking at their phone in a queue anyway. So who knows what they're ever even seeing? That's a great point.
But will Disney take the time to like engage them, which it sounds like they will with all the little games and stuff? That'll be interesting to see too.
Okay, so a couple rapid fires here. So I've been a couple times. Jeremy's never been. What's the sales pitch? Why should Jeremy go to Disneyland, and if so, when should he go? What time of year?
You should go to Disneyland because it's the original park. It's very charming. You can see personal touches from Walt, little weird things like the petrified tree that Walt gave to Lillian Disney as a present that she didn't want, and she then gifted it to the park. You can see his apartment. You can see, his castle. You should go. Oh, that's such a tough question because it's always busy now. You should go like right after Halloween ends.
Okay.
Like November, like the first or second week of November. Use a crowd calendar on touringplans.com.
Yes.
And where we take every day of the year and rank them 1 to 10, and that'll give you a good idea.
Perfect.
So, touring plans, going through it, the rides, everything. What's something that maybe you see at Disneyland, or just something that in your work that maybe the regular person wouldn't pick up? What's just something unique? I know it's a very broad question, but what's something unique that you find at Disneyland?
I would say the like I mentioned before, the weird stuff. There's like an anchor in New Orleans Square that is all like rusted and has barnacles all over it, and it has a little mysterious like plaque kind of explaining what it is. And then the petrified tree that I was talking about, and then just all the little nooks and crannies of like interesting little decorations. So you can go through like New Orleans Square, and each of the balconies have like there's like a chair with like a book open, and then like a glass of lemonade just sitting there, like somebody had just left their stuff and then went to go do something else. And then you can hear little conversations going on in the balconies. Same thing with like Main Street. You can you walk by and you see a window for a dentist, and then you can hear like a little kid getting his dental work done and talking to the dentist. That's like my advice to people, is just to slow down and sip, instead of like taking big gulps. Just sip the park. Disneyland is a great park to slow down and just sip. There's a little porch on Main Street right next to the Silhouette Studio, and you can just sit on the porch and watch people go by, and you can even watch the parade there. And then some of the rides that you would overlook, like the Storybook Land, where it's just like these little dollhouses basically, but they're from Disney movies. So you can see like Pinocchio's Village or Mr. Toad's house, and then they even have the modern stuff like Elsa's Ice Castle. And then to ride the train around the park, because the train is unique at Disneyland. You're riding the train, and then all of a sudden you're going past a Grand Canyon diorama, and then you see dinosaurs from the 1964 World's Fair. It just has a lot of cool, unique stuff like that.
Yeah, the train's a ride, and here's what I'll say about the Storybook Land. If you're an adult and you're bigger, ride the boat. Don't do the train, the circus train. That is a tight fit.
Yeah, the train can be a little tight.
That's good advice for me.
Yeah. So for me, that was with the kids and everything. I'm like, wow, this is let's put 5 of us in this little seat here. That was tough. So anything else you'd like to share with us? So I know one of the things, where people can find your work besides touring plans, how to get in contact with you if you'd like them to, and anything that maybe you're working on that we can look forward to here as we enter 2018.
Yeah, just touringplans.com is the site that I work for, and it's a really good Disney resource. We, all of us at Touring Plans, like helping families plan vacations. We want families to get the most out of their time and money and have a good trip. And I love leisure. I am obsessed with leisure. I want everyone to have nice trips. I can't tell you how many times I walk into the park and it's 10 minutes after opening and there's already a family gathered around a map and they're screaming at each other because they don't know what to do. It's like, just take the guesswork out of your trip planning and have a good trip. Personally, I am on Twitter and Instagram at Guy Selga, Guyselga. I tweet and Instagram only about Disney. Well, 95% about Disney. I'll throw in some video games and movie stuff every once in a while. But anyway, mostly about Disney. And I'm I talk about food a lot. Yeah, give me a follow. I think you won't regret it. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. I think we can both agree with that. Well, Guy, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it. This has been interesting, fascinating, and I think it gave, especially for me, being a Walt Disney World only fanatic right now and not being to Disneyland. I mean, this has me pumped to try and move, I think, that trip up even closer than I had originally planned for my family, and to pick up on some of those nuances that you don't get anywhere else. So again, check out touringplans.com. John and I are avid users of the app, of the site, and I picked up recently the unofficial guide to Walt Disney World, which even though it states you don't have to read cover to cover, I'm attempting to, because in there, even in any of the unofficial guides that you guys provide, there are so many tiny details that you can pick up you would never know, even if you think you know everything about Disney. So again, Guy, thank you so much. We'll keep in touch with you, and we look forward to seeing what Touring Plans has in store for 2018. That's all we have for now. We'll see you real soon.